Welcome to the latest Pinnacle Forum podcast on stewarding the influence that God has given you. This is a series of conversations with leaders who happen to be Christians. Many are fellow partners and are also currently involved in one of our forums. As leaders in our fields, we gain influence. We may think that our influence came because of our intellect, our looks, our luck, our personality, and it's for our own use. The reality is that God grants this for us to use in the advancement of His kingdom. These are the stories of people who are learning how to use that God-given influence in service to others and ultimately to God. We trust these will encourage you as you steward your own God-given influence. Now on to our discussion. My guest today is my friend Connor Hillard. His dad, Steve Hillard, was my friend before I ever met Connor. I remember praying for Connor when he was in college, and Steve and I were serving on the board together. And now Connor is working on Pinnacle Forum's behalf. And we're going to hear Connor's story today and a little bit about his passion within Pinnacle Forum. Welcome, Connor.
Thank you, Chuck. It's so good to be with you. And I think we've only met face-to-face a handful of times. That kind of is the new normal post-COVID. I'm all the way in Dallas, Texas. I'm so glad to be here and honored to just be able to share a little bit of my story and a little bit about Pinnacle Forum for Young Successful Leaders, why we started it, what makes it important, why we do it. So again, happy to be with you, Chuck.
So you're currently leading the initiative, YSL, Young Successful Leaders for Pinnacle Forum, and we'll get to that in a little while. That started when you were hired in January of 2020. So we've got a 4-year history to tell, a story to tell. But tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to the point where you even wanted to come to work for Pinnacle Forum.
That's a great story. Well, I think I'll start kind of shortly before I joined Pinnacle Forum, post-college, and then kind of wind the story back a little bit further than that and tie it all in. But really, when I graduated from college, I was a political junkie, always have been. My great-grandmother was a Republican Woman of the Year, at least so she tells me. She was known to tell tall tales in the state of Illinois. In the 70s, we had, Christmas cards from way back in the day from the Nixons and all that stuff. And so I used to just sit at her feet and listen to stories. And my father's obviously very politically observant, to say the least, but left college just really bent on, okay, I'm going to go serve in government, do campaigns, whatever it was. So I actually moved back to my home state of Illinois to do a fellowship in the previous governor's administration. He is, as for now, no longer governor and is not in prison. So that's a good start.
That's unusual for a governor from Illinois. That must be one of very few.
Over my lifetime, I think we're rocking above 60 to 70% of governors in prison. But it was a fellow in legislative affairs department there. Did that for about 6 months and realized I needed to get back to Texas. I was missing my friends, missing being close to my alma mater, Baylor University. And we had a pretty good football team at the time, so loved to attend those games. And but knew I still wanted to stay in politics. And so got to work in public affairs in the city of Austin just by a random happenstance connection, as is the story of most of my life, just connecting and finding the right people and God just opening doors. I think kind of my theme today is, but God. I think of so many different stories in my life where I've messed up or taken the wrong path, but God changed that trajectory. And I'm so thankful for that. And so during that time was working in public affairs at the city of Austin level, interacting with the mayor and city council on behalf of developers and the police union and all those different sorts of things. Well, you can imagine a strong Christian, conservative kid from Baylor University interacting with the mayor and city council of the city of Austin wasn't exactly the right fit. I enjoyed my time tremendously. I have a great relationship with my old boss, but it just wasn't where I thought I was meant to be. So through that time, again, through relationships, started consulting on campaigns and helping out a couple of different races. One of the campaign consultants that I came in contact with took a shine to me, introduced me to a state representative where I became his communications director for a legislative session. Here in Texas, they meet once every 2 years for about 5-6 months, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. So did that session there. And through that, Chuck, really, I realized that I was trying to force this political thing. I thought that's who I was designed and encoded to be. And my identity really kind of got wrapped up in that. And again, but God had a different plan for my life. And so after that session, I was really broken, lost, and just like, okay, I wasn't living the faith that I had, historically lived out. I've been a believer my entire life, a strong believer my entire life. I just was lost. And so I got a job working in Houston and recruiting financial advisors for Northwestern Mutual, of all things. Again, just kind of that lost post-college years, like, who do I want to be? What do I want to go do? And in that time, really, what I think God was doing was, maybe that wasn't the career for me, but what he was doing is using that time to really re-energize my faith, get me plugged in with a great group of fellow believers and Christians and young men who loved the Lord, and got plugged into a great church. And the story goes on from there. But what really precipitated this Pinnacle Forum thing, and this is where I'll kind of rewind the clock a little bit, was I had grown up the son of a Pinnacle Forum partner. You mentioned you served with my dad on the board for years, and he's been involved for 20 years, almost well over half my life. And Chuck, when I tell you this, and this story is for the many of the listeners, probably a similar story that I hope their sons and daughters could tell, is I watched my dad become a different person and man of God because of Pinnacle Forum. Lifelong believer, born and raised in the church, but he describes and fully attribute this to him. And of course, being raised in Central Illinois, and my dad's big on analogies, and he's big on farm analogies. He grew up raising pigs, but he talks about how he lived his life in silos. He lived, he had his faith in one silo separate from the rest. He had his family in one silo separate from the rest. He had his business in one silo separate from the rest, and everything was separate. And Pinnacle Forum came in at just the right time in his life to where all of those silos were knocked down, and there wasn't an aspect of his life that wasn't being influenced and shaped by Christ. And so being very clear on what it was that was this precipitating event that led to my father becoming a different dad and husband, leader in the community. I watched his, not earthly success, but his success within his faith continue to grow. He was a young entrepreneur, bought his first company at the age of 26. And so I tell you all this story because, again, that was so attractive to me, knowing what Pinnacle Forum could do. And so I bring up his age when he bought his first company. He and I had talked so much over the years about how he wishes that he would have had Pinnacle Forum sooner. Mm-hmm. Who knows the trajectory that he would have had, not even just in his career, but the mistakes not made, because he would have had men in his life pouring into him, loving him and supporting him and helping him change his life and live a better life for Christ.
Me too.
You could,
Same thing. Running a business, wishing that I had the benefit of what I know now. Yeah.
Desperate for it. Yeah. And again, not knowing that, something like this was out there or not, it wasn't available quite yet. Yeah. And so, we talked about that. And as my faith continued to kind of regrow and sprout, I felt a hunger my own self to be around other Christian leaders and believers. I was going to small group and Bible study at church, and that's awesome. Being around your church community and body are so critical and essential. But really, I felt like I was missing that mechanism to be around other young men, yes, other young believers, yes, but other young men who are believers and leaders. And I wasn't feeling like I was having that itch scratched. And so I went to him and we kind of prayed about it, kicked around the idea, and ultimately came to you and the board of directors with this kind of just dream of like, okay, not only do I want this, but I'll be the guy to go start it. And totally on faith. And the board took me on faith, and obviously placing their faith in the Lord. And so in 2020, right before COVID struck, like literally weeks, I was hired on, and we came to create what we now call our Young Successful Leader Forums. And it's changed my life. And hopefully those who are listening, who are a part of YSO, or even those who are not, have been changed by it too. I shared with you the other day a voicemail I got from one of the guys from a forum I stepped out of. And he's like, man, I'm just so thankful for this. I would be so lost without this. And he's been in it for 4 years. He was the very first YSL partner. He saw the value. So anyways,
Connor,
I've droned on.
You said it changed your life. How?
My gosh, where do I begin?
I mean, that's a big statement. It changed my life.
Yeah.
The vegetables that I eat changed my life. The pills that I take changed my life.
TV, right? Yeah.
How did it change your life?
That's a great question. I think being around peers, there's just something about it. It's a secret sauce that I wish I could quantify and hand out to people in a jar and they could drink from it. And thankfully they kind of can by joining a forum. But just being around guys who were certainly far from perfect, particularly young men who are lost. And, many of them, they love the Lord, but they're just figuring it out. They're meeting their potential spouse and dating, or they're having their first, couple kiddos, figuring out what it means to be a great dad and love Jesus and serving their church and their community. And it's like, okay, what do I want to go be? Guys like me that we're just trying to figure it out. So having that my own self, not leading the forums, put that to the side as an employee of Pinnacle Forum, put that to the side for a second and take up just being a part of the forums and being around those guys, getting their wisdom, their intentionality, their support, their prayer. Oh my gosh, their prayer. There's been so many hard times for me over the last 4 years. I'm very open about it. My challenges with mental health, happy to get into that more, but to have a group of guys that not only could coach me and guide me, but just that were there. They were just there to help me get through the darkest times of my life at times, to get me through the dating of my now current wife and engagement and marriage and getting through that with, a sane brain. I'd be so lost without it.
So how did they coach you to that romance?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, they obviously, put Christ first. I mean,
they had to approve, right?
Yeah, they had to prove.
Sure.
I think they've met Lexi once or twice, at least some of the forums that I lead have. They certainly know her just through, my heart for her and my sharing about her in the forum. They've helped me navigate really tough questions and tough times, even in our own relationship. Again, not perfect, as any relationship is not. So they're pouring into me and saying, hey, here's what I did. Don't do this. Here's what I think. Don't do this. Having that level of, Jesus manifested through these men in my forums to pour out his love and mercy, and also using his word written on their hearts and manifesting itself through these people in my life. I mean, again, what more could you ask for? Okay,
so how's it going with YSL? Do you have any part in the women's young successful leaders?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Chuck. We do have, you hear me talk about the guys. I solely lead the men's forums. So because of Pinnacle Forum's policy, and it's an awesome policy of confidentiality, transparency, vulnerability, we try to keep folks separate by gender. And that is just, a guy is going to share things with other men that he may not share with women present, and vice versa. And really, that's not appropriate for a lot of those things that should be shared. Guys that are struggling with their own marriages, or struggling with pornography, or struggling with, sexual sin or work challenges, whatever it may be that they're talking about. So that I lead those forums. I recruit those young leaders, have conversations with them, bring them into the forum. I recruit the young, successful ladies into Pinnacle Forum. I, as I said, don't lead those. Mary Harp from our team leads those and does an extraordinary job in leading those young women through the process of being in a forum.
You're leading those forums of men and helping to populate the forums of women. What do you see as the potential? Where's this going? Yeah.
So when I first started this within Pinnacle Forum and the support of the leadership of Pinnacle Forum,
let me interject a question. Did you think it'd be easier? Did you think it'd be easier to do? Has it been a struggle?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You're selling people truly on an idea, truly on something spiritual that most people don't have, say they don't have the bandwidth. There's a financial cost. So there's that element there. And there's, just time, precious time, an hour once a week for some people in the mornings. They, specifically for the men, I've come to learn, men are much more involved in their children's lives than they were 20, 30 years ago. So getting kids out the door is a different deal today. in today's day and age. And I applaud that. I fully anticipate to be that kind of dad when that day comes. But man, I of course I thought it'd be easier, because I knew what it could do, and I still know what it can do, and I'm so motivated by that. That no matter how much the obstacle is, or the objections that I face when having conversations with people, I'm still know what we're doing. And the point I was going to make about having the support of Pinnacle Forum leadership and folks like you and our wise owls, and I'll talk about the wise owl role here in a minute, and even our partners, is when I started this 4 years ago, I thought I'd rather have 5 guys and 2 or 3 women or whatever in forums that are going a mile deep, a mile long, and are super committed to being transformed so that they can go out and transform the culture around them, versus 100 people who are coming in, maybe once a month, and they're just kind of, checking the Christian box. And this is something I feel like I should do, but I'm not really all in. So the mission of this has been, let's have young leaders, and whoever is willing to be a part of that, let's go. Let's go. This is a movement of leaders across the country, of people who are sick and tired of what they see in the culture, sick and tired of the sin in their lives, sick and tired of feeling lonely. Let's go all in together and be a part of this forum and be transformed by it. And so that's been our motto. So the opportunity, we could be the most, and we talked about this a lot, Chuck, whether it be 50-year-old, 60, 70-year-old Pinnacle Forum partner, or a 32-year-old with 2 kids at home. We can be and will be the indispensable resource to the church, capital C church in this country, because these leaders are so often not poured into, and they're expected to just constantly pour out and pour out and pour out into their families and their businesses and into their communities. Yet very little pouring in happens for them. And Pinnacle Forum is that place where they can get poured back into and become an even better leader. And so to have that opportunity there on the horizon going forward into the future is what gets me really excited about, Pinnacle Forum's growth.
Two-pronged question. Do you think that being a part of a forum gives you a leg up in the marketplace? And if so, give us some examples without names.
Yeah, happily. So without question, yes. I mean, having your own personal board of directors to process through the challenges of life. No person of themselves is an island, right? We don't get to, talk about silos, right? We don't get to silo ourselves off. That's why my dad felt so lost. He was siloed in everything that he was doing. And when he had that personal board of directors and knocked those silos down, to be totally transformed, and to where his work was being influenced by his faith, his family was being influenced by his faith. Things were, maybe not by earthly means, financial or familiar or whatever, were improving because of his joy that was rooted in Christ. And so he was better equipped to face the challenges that were coming at him, familial, financial, work-wise. And I've seen that so many times throughout our forums as well. And so I absolutely think it gives our guys a leg up in the marketplace, because they're holistic, where it's a holistic approach within the forum, to where they're better. They're at a whole nother level in every other aspect of their lives. And so to your second question about, some stories, where do I begin? I mean, the amount of young people that, particularly starting out, that are in major corporations and are facing tremendous amounts of persecution. I have a guy who works for a financial institution, and this was in our initial call. And there was a few things that he had liked on LinkedIn that had the word God in them. And he got messages from his employer, hey, you need to unlike this. He didn't even post these things. You need to unlike this. So being that back room for him to say, hey, we're with you. We're here to support you. Here's how you can navigate in them, those sorts of things. Man, being in this role now, and unfortunately, this has become all too common, the amount of times a forum has had to rally around a fellow brother, and I'm sure Mary would attest to this, or a fellow sister in her case, that has lost a loved one, or being at this age and time, lost a child before it came to be born. To have that group of people that are praying for that child, that are praying for the wife, that are there to support and be there when that something tragic happens, whether it's something losing a child or whatever, is remarkable. I could go back to the workplace examples, guys that are, interacting with people at work, don't know how to handle it. They're trying to share the gospel, but also not trying to violate work standards or whatever it is in this increasingly hostile culture. The amount of Facebook and Instagram and junk being thrown at my demographic, my age of people, is that the amount of information and just junk that's being thrown at people in today's age is so hard to overcome alone. And so, again, having that group of people to love on you, support you, and help you think rightly about things is indispensable.
You mentioned, and I was wrongly calling it for a while, the wise old owl.
Yeah.
I think I upset some people. You mentioned the wise owl that's in each of your forums. Talk about that. Who are they? Where do they come from?
Yeah, great question.
And what's their function?
Yeah. So this was something that I can't take a whole lot of credit for, to be frank. We had a Pinnacle Forum partner who had a heart for young leaders. When I was hired on, had recently retired as a high up executive at an organization, at a pretty large company. And he's like, just let me come in and audit them. I have a heart. I'd love to just help you grow this and figure out what to do. Because I'm, starting this program from scratch and trying to put the Pinnacle Forum model in place. And what we found was, here was this guy who had been there, done that, who had moments of great trial and great success, had moments where he failed tremendously and succeeded tremendously, familial strife, challenges, marriage, the list goes on, kids, raising kids, grandkids now. And he was then able, what I didn't realize, because the heart of Pinnacle Forum is the pure driven natures, being around people that are going through the same sorts of things, same age, at 28 versus 32, you're not that far apart. One guy may be married, one guy may be dating, but you're not that far removed from each other and each other's shared experiences. So we knew we needed that. But having this wise owl in the forum was so critical, because not only we don't have all the answers, particularly young guys, we're all figuring it out too. And so we're guessing in some cases and trying to do the best we can. But to have that person in that chair each and every week, that's not just a mentor, not just a father figure or a mother figure in the case of our young, successful ladies forums, but is there to just contribute and be a part of the group as well through their lens of lived experience. And so that just created this awesome dynamic of the intergenerational nature, which has been indispensable. Again, we talked about this in a podcast a few weeks ago, Chuck, of, how do we bridge this gap between generations? And I think we've done that really, really well. And so not only are they there in the forum, but then they've opened themselves up, oftentimes being retired, executives, people that have been successful in the public, private sector, whatever. Some are still working, in fact, but they're there to be offline as well. Maybe it's just a one-on-one conversation, that you need to have with somebody that's more that mentor figure. They've been there in that regard. It's helped me grow YSL and the relationship that I had with that wise owl. And it's helped our young men and your young women in their professional lives and their personal lives. So again, another really critical part of the puzzle to making our forums really great.
So I'm a 32-year-old, and I'm describing somebody I met at lunch yesterday. 32-year-old, married man, no kids, working my way up in the financial world. Can I visit one of your forums?
100%. We'd love to have you. Pinnacle Forum.
How do I do that?
Yeah. So the best way is to reach out to me. I'll provide my email. It's Connor, CONNOR .Hillard, HILLARD at pinnacleforum.com. Reach out to me directly. Let's set up a time to chat and let's talk about Pinnacle Forum. Most importantly, I just want to hear your story. That's been the most amazing thing about doing what we do. The stories we get to hear, people like actively out there going for it, in some ways maybe struggling and obviously in need of what Pinnacle Forum offers, but that are out there just doing incredible things for the kingdom. But we'd love to have you. The great thing about Pinnacle Forum, you get that first month for free. So it's that trial period to really just kind of kick the tires, determine if the forum's the right fit, something that meets your schedule, your needs, guys that you really can feel some chemistry with and frankly, vibe with and are like, okay. And usually after that first month, it's like, duh. yeah, let me sign. Where do I sign the dotted line? Because it's just, I mean, you've had this too, folks that have been like, week one, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I sign? Because
Mm-hmm.
the Holy Spirit's there. And, the guys, when they're showing up and they're present and they're engaging and they're sharing, we're not content driven. And we talk about that. We're content flavored. What makes us special is the stories, is the lived experience of the guys in the forum.
So you guys can't do this for free. It costs money to run ministries. Do you charge? And if you do, is there some kind of a break for us young guys that are still trying to buy our first home or struggling to make the mortgage, kids on the way? Can you offer me something? Give me a break here, Connor.
Yeah, you had me fooled there for a second. It almost sounded like you didn't know.
No, I'm teeing it up for you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try and hit the grand slam. So for the first month, again, it's free. Come check us out, kick the tires. After that, for our young leaders, for the first 3 months, it's $50 per month. And then after that, $125 per month.
So and $50 and how much?
Per month for the first 3 months.
Okay.
And $125 per month after that. And really, Chuck, Pinnacle Forum, over the years, we've talked about the cost of Pinnacle Forum and what should that be. And, granted, how do you place a price on something? In my view, this indispensable. Obviously, I'm paid to say that, but I've lived it. And it creates some buy-in from our partners when there's financial component attached. My guys, when we're talking about this and they know the value, they're like, this is a date. This is like a night out for me and my wife. And you don't even have to give up that. It's like anymore, like taking 3 kids and your wife to McDonald's. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Like twice a month, McDonald's for your whole family. I mean, that's where we're at in this time. But, obviously ministry isn't free as much as we wish it was. We are very blessed to be supported by our partners. They see the value. It allows guys like me to do this full time and just love and serve leaders literally from coast to coast. And I know you can appreciate that too, Chuck.
Okay, so you and I just met on an elevator.
Yeah.
We just pushed the button, the door's closed. We're on floor 1 and we're headed for floor 20.
Okay.
And nobody's going to interrupt us because there's nobody else in the building. Give me your elevator pitch. You've got 20 floors. Give me your elevator pitch for Pinnacle Forum.
Yeah. Do you want to be a part?
Wait a minute. I'm going to put a timer on it.
Yeah. We got to figure out how long it'd take us to get 20 floors, but
it's not going to take 20 minutes. You've got,
we'll take that.
You've got 2 minutes.
All right.
Go.
I don't even think I need 2 minutes. Are you a believer? Do you consider yourself a leader? Do you find yourself lonely? Pinnacle Forum is the place for you. Pinnacle Forum is that place where you can come in each and every week, where all the other stuff that's on your plate, all the other distractions of life are at you, and there's the devil's trying to win your heart. Come to this place, come to this space, be with brothers, be with sisters, and just really be fully present. Unplug from all the other junk and witness the power of your brother and sister stories. Have them pray over you, have them love you, have them support you, have them pour wisdom into your life. We can't do this alone as leaders. You know that, we know that. And so that's why Pinnacle Forum is the place for a leader, for a Christian believer and leader, because we can't do this alone. And if you don't have that community, you need it. And Pinnacle Forum is that place where you're going to be unlocked to new heights and new joys by the grace of God.
Ding, ding. We're at 420. All right. That took you a minute and 15 seconds. That's pretty good.
Okay. So I'll bank that time.
So figure your elevator speech is just over a minute. And I'm convinced, but I live on the East Coast. What do you got for me on the East Coast?
Yeah.
Do I have to, what time does it start?
Yeah. So the great thing is we've got forums that meet all throughout the week, different days of the week. I think we have a forum that meets young, successful leaders, men's forum that meets every day, but Wednesday, which we're always open to starting. It's just as it lies right now. We have guys literally from coast to coast, like I said, all the way from San Diego to Washington, D.C. And so that is available. The great thing about Pinnacle Forum is since we do this on Zoom is you don't have to worry about getting in your car and getting clear across town, particularly if you live in a big city. I live in a big city like Dallas. Getting across town once a week for an hour to meet with guys, it sounds easy. It's not. you're in traffic for forever. We're busy people. We serve busy people. We know that. So hopping on a Zoom call at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 6:30 or whatever it may be for your particular forum, being on that for an hour where you can go, I'm literally in a t-shirt and shorts, getting on the call, pulling up Zoom, boom, I'm on, do my hour, and then I'm off the rest of my day, ready to roll.
So no matter where you live in the country, we've got a forum that will fit your time needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without question.
All right. Well, Connor, you have built a compelling case. If I was 40 years younger, I would join you. I'm glad that you're there for the people who are 40 years younger, because I think your dad and I would have benefited greatly if this had been something that existed for us. We wouldn't have had to try to create it ourselves. So thank you for what you're doing. Can't tell you how much we appreciate it. What a blessing it's been to watch you grow and mature, and watch YSL grow and mature, and learn the lessons that we've learned together by making the mistakes that we've made, and doing the right things occasionally. Thank you very much. It's been a privilege to watch you. Anything else you want to add before I close this out?
I just want to say thank you to you and your leadership, and the support, again, from the Pinnacle Forum board, you, countless others, our partners. To be able to do this, to love and serve leaders, is, what more could a follower of Christ ask for?
Well, it was our pleasure. So from all of us here at Pinnacle Forum to all of you out there listening, wherever you are, thank you for listening. I'm hoping that some of you are going to reach out to Connor, or you're going to ask your kids, write down his email address, and ask your kids, your younger business associates, say, hey, this is something you might want to look into. It would benefit them greatly. I've enrolled my own son-in-law is in a forum, and he's there every week. We trust these stories are an encouragement to you as you steward the influence that God has given you, the way Connor is stewarding the influence that God has given him. Thank you for listening.